My apologies for, I really tried to brush up on my Dutch, on the way here, but it just wasn't going to happen. So, thank you for having me today. I appreciate that. We are going to do exactly what this says. Actually, we're going to do a little bit more. And please tell me, I want to make sure that I pace my comments. Dutch is not my first language, obviously, and I'm pretty sure English is probably not your first language. So just pace me. Tell me to slow down, speed up, whatever we need to do. I want to make sure that the messages come across clearly today. What I want to do, this is a presentation that Ed Brill, how many of you know Ed or recognize that name? I've met him before. Yeah, he's kind of like this world famous guy he is my boss. He was my boss. Ed has taken another job, another assignment inside of IBM. Executives in IBM, they don't have the luxury usually of sort of saying, hey, I want to go over here and do this now. They're more along the lines of, okay, it's time for you to pick everything up and go over here and do this now, Mr. Executive, because we think, we need your expertise over here, or we need to round out your skills, or there's some, for whatever reason, Ed has taken a new job inside of IBM. He is going to be spearheading the marketing efforts behind what Ginny Rometty, our CEO and chairman, is pushing as a brand new mobile enterprise inside of IBM. And it's not like mobile is new to IBM. We've been doing mobile things for quite some time now. But the drive to make that a very, very important and strategic part of IBM business is now sort of in full swing, and Ed's going to be spearheading a lot of that, much like he did for the messaging and collaboration piece. So about 2 weeks ago, when he departed, they took the big flashlight off of Ed and they started sort of pointing it around a little bit, and it sort of stopped on my forehead, and it's kind of like this light right here. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of me and hearing a lot more from me in the space of messaging and collaboration. But I want to make sure that you do know a little bit about me. You've known Ed. Great friend, great colleague. I've known Ed for probably 20 years, and we've worked together very closely for the last 7 or 8 years. But I want you to know a little bit about me. And since we're videoing this, I have to put up this slide. And this is the one that says, everything I say, you've got a choice. You can either ignore it or I will have to kill you. So it's your choice, whichever. So anyhow, so this is me. Let me give you a couple of things about me. That's the first thing you should know. Yeah, and I admit it. I've been around for a while. I live in Texas. That's, it's the United States of Texas, as I refer to it. I live in the Dallas area, but I work in Boston. Actually, outside of Boston, where we have our lab, main lab for messaging and collaboration, and actually a lot of other products are developed in Littleton, which if you've been, some of you may have been to the Boston area. Littleton is about, 70 kilometers or so outside of the Boston area. But that's where I actually work from. That's where our development teams are. And the role that I am in, I have worked with our development engineers for several years now. And that's just the environment that I work in. In fact, I go all the way back. If you cut me, you will see yellow blood that will run out of my veins. I go back to the very, very early days of Notes. In fact, how many of you are Notes and Domino users? I want to get a kind of a feel. Wow, thanks. Appreciate that. I don't mean to. I don't want to get the aerobic thing going this morning, but thank you for that. I go back all the way to the very beginning of our stuff. I don't know a lot about a lot, but what they do allow me to do is get to come talk to people like you in venues such as this. So eOffice, thank you for hosting this event and allowing me to be a part of it. I go back, as I said, to the very early days. My training background is software engineering. That's my degree out of university. And I told this story yesterday to a group of German customers in Munich. When I came out of university, I did what any university student does. I've got to pay bills, right? I've got to pay off college debt. And so I went to work for a couple of different small organizations, and then got a call from a friend who was working for this company called Lotus. And that was in about 1988. And it was about the time that 4 of my colleagues, Ray Ozzie, Tim Halverson, Lynn Kaywell, and Steve Beckart, which if you've been around Notes for any length of period at all, or length of time at all, those are the 4 guys that basically founded and created what in 1989 became Lotus Notes. It was a project out of the University of Illinois. Here's the extra credit part. Can anybody tell me what the graduate project was that preceded Notes? There was one guy yesterday that actually knew this. Anybody know? It's called Plato. Plato. And I can remember to this day, DEC, PDP, this really dates me. You and I probably can connect a lot. Yeah. Sorry. We got the same hairstyle. I know, right?
Not related.
No. Not yet. Not that I know of. But I can still remember to this day when I first heard about this project called Plato. It was on a DEC PDP 1170 computer. I can still see the orange or the amber monitor around which people would gather to look at this thing and talk about this stuff called collaboration. And my goodness, we have come a long ways. When you go from collaboration and messaging all the way to what this event here today is talking about, and that's about social stuff. Social is just the next iteration, I think, of collaboration. But anyhow, I tell you all that to say that my roots go all the way back to that time. I was one of those guys at Lotus. Nobody wanted to work with Plato. Nobody wanted to work with Notes. There were the 4 guys I mentioned, Ray, Tim, Steve, and Len, the developers. There were 6 salespeople who they're coin operated. You just say, hey, go sell this thing and we'll give you money. They did. And then there were 6 technical people that sort of backed up those salespeople. And then the 6 technical people, I was one of those guys. We actually ended up doing some of the development tasks as well. And it goes all the way back to the beginning. You're like, so what? It doesn't matter. I say all that to say that I have a passion for this stuff. I love this stuff. I've lived in it for 23 years now. And I'm so excited about what's going on in terms of the integration with social and messaging and collaboration. We're going to talk about that today. So this is the direction we're going to go. Long introduction, sorry about that. But I wanted you to kind of know where I'm coming from because it pertains to where I want to take you today. I want to give you a little bit about how the Notes and Domino and how that relates to the connections business, how that's going, how it went in 2012. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our productivity tools, and I'll sort of emphasize the social aspect of that and how that plays into all of the things that we're doing around connections as well. I want to talk about cloud. I heard some comments at the break. There's some interest. Just a show of hands. Cloud, interesting to you guys? Not interesting? Some of you? Yeah? So I guess this means show of hands. I'm getting a lot of head nods. Yeah, so we'll talk about that a little bit, tell you a little bit about what happened in 2012 and kind of where we see things going in 2013. Then these 2 pieces right here, this is where I want to spend the meat of the time, because this is the stuff that pertains to, I think, what there is great interest here in, and that's the social angle, the social aspect of things. And these 2 things happen to be products that are mine, so you're going to have to listen to me talk about those anyhow. And we'll wrap up with a bit of a roadmap discussion. A lot of times people look at IBM and they're kind of, okay, where are you going with this stuff? I'm going to tell you, the future is pretty darn bright around this core set of offerings. And we're pretty excited about that. I'll paint out a little vision for you, taking us well into at least to 2015 in terms of the product map. But if you look at the way IBM supports products that it puts in market, when we introduce a new product, if I introduce a new product today, it automatically has a 10-year lifespan. That's just the way IBM works. Right? It goes and goes and goes. So, man, we are projecting way out. It's kind of dangerous in our business, as you guys well know, but the future looks pretty bright for this stuff, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Pardon me. All right. So, in terms of what's happening in the market as we see it today, let me give you a couple of indicators about the health of how things are going from a Notes and Domino and Connections perspective. In 2012. This thing right here is the one I want to zero in on for just a second. We have this measurement. Am I talking okay pace-wise, by the way? Okay, cool. We have this measurement that we refer to as reinstatements. We didn't used to pay attention to reinstatements because we didn't have reinstatements. Reinstatements are when customers for whatever reason, have gone away from the IBM portfolio of products, specifically the ones that we're talking about today. They have quit paying what we refer to as maintenance. You'll hear it referred to as S&S, or software and subscription. When you license this stuff, that license is perpetual. You get it for the rest of, eternity, effectively. But what you don't get is the right, unless you continue to pay the maintenance, you don't get the right to pick up the phone and say, hey, Scott, I've got a problem. I need you to come fix a problem. Or, hey, I think we need this new feature. You don't have the right, unless you pay the support part of it, to go get the latest updates. So you have to be current on that maintenance in order to get that stuff. The point I'm trying to make is in 2012, we saw a little over 1,500 companies, not individuals, companies, come back to IBM. It's like, I'm a little embarrassed to have to be coming back because I went away. That's happening. And we see that happening based, and what they're telling us as they come back is we see value in what you're doing around the social stuff. We see value in what you're doing with mobile. We may have gone away for a period of time, but we're coming back. And just to give you an idea of the pace of that, this was an end-of-year number. At the end of the third quarter, that number was about 1,130, 31, something like that. So there's about 450, 500 customers, organizations per quarter that are sort of swinging back in the direction of IBM for messaging, collaboration, and social. We think that's an important deal. Another thing, just to give you an indication, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There's an event in Orlando that happens every year. It used to be called Lotusphere, now called Connect. And one of the things that Ed does or did, and that I've done for several years in that particular event, is ask people what version of our stuff you're running. It's interesting to know. That event is a big love fest for people who use this technology anyhow. But it's interesting to see what people are using, what version of our stuff they're using. And so from a Notes and Domino perspective, it was amazing last year to ask that question. People are using the most current stuff. It actually sort of floored us. When we said, hey, raise your hands if you're using 8.5x, 90% of the hands went up, and we hadn't even shipped what we refer to as the third-tier languages. When we build a product, we take it through an internationalization, globalization kind of thing, the language support. We group languages into 3 different groups. We hadn't even shipped that third set of languages. And what that means is that people were trying to use the stuff and engaging in using this stuff even before we got the product fully out the door. So this year, we asked the same question, only we asked how many of you are using the 9.0 beta that is about to ship in March, hasn't even gone out the door yet. And the hands that flew up, again, were probably 60 or 70%. This is in an audience of about probably 2,000 people that we were having this particular session for. The hands went up that about 90% of the people in that room had either looked at, played with, tested, installed the 9.0 beta code that is still a month away from actually shipping. So again, the message here is that there's some positive momentum. We're excited about that. IDC, International Data Corporation, ranks us still number 2. There's a company in the northwestern part of the United States that will rename nameless, who's firmly number 1. I get that. I don't mind being number 2 if that's the position. I'm okay with that. Everybody else down that list is kind of an also ran. Right? There's Redmond, and then there's IBM, and then everybody else is well below that in the single digits. So great position that we're playing from there. Gartner, if you happen to follow some of the analysts at Gartner, there's a guy named Matt Kane that writes. I talk to Matt about every 4 or 5 weeks. Sometimes, I hope this doesn't get back to him. Sometimes I just want to kick him because you never know which side of the bed he's going to wake up on. Some days we're his best friend, other days he just wants to take us out and beat us up. And so I never know, but we finally have Matt Kane, a great Gartner analyst, brilliant guy, very sharp in this particular part of our industry. Some days it's just a challenge to know where he's going to come down, positively or negatively. And we've got him saying positive things now. And reporting in that way for Gartner is always a good thing. So That's probably enough on that slide. One of the things that we did last year, we introduced, or we announced rather, an agreement with this company. Some of you are smiling because you recognize this company right here out of the Netherlands. The Trust Factory little business partner, we basically did an agreement with Trust Factory to say, hey, you've got some great tools. You've had some great tools. It's called DNA, the tool that Trust Factory has. The DNA tool is a great tool for taking a look at an environment and making some judgment calls. We have rebranded that, we've licensed that, we've made that whole stack of analysis tools available to you guys and to partners. And what it's good at is basically looking at an infrastructure and saying, hey, against this set of norms, you either are doing a very good job or you've got some work to do. We rebranded that. We now call it the Domino Double Check. Great piece of technology. The output from that particular effort means that we now have a way of going into an environment and saying, look, if you want to make some changes to your environment, here's a good place to start. Or if you think you're not using your Notes and Domino environment, think again, because this is what the reports are showing. So it's a good piece of technology, good tools, and we're pretty excited about that as well. Traveler, how many of you are using Traveler? Like Traveler? Yeah, cool stuff. Big clue right here. Big clue. Pay attention to what we do in the ActiveSync world. ActiveSync, I don't much care for the company that it comes from, but I like the technology. And we're going to continue to do some things with ActiveSync. It's a big, bright clue. Okay? Just keep your eyes peeled for that, because there's some good stuff coming. But Traveler, we shipped 2 updates to Traveler last year. One in the first half of the year and one in December. The first half of the year, we picked up something that's referred to as high availability. Basically, fault tolerance for your Traveler environment. It's a good thing, right? Something falls over from a Traveler perspective on the back end. There's another piece that sort of swoops in, and an end user never knows it. That's a very good thing. There were some things that we did from a security perspective and from a user experience perspective in that first update pack. And then in December, this piece right down here, in December, we just simply picked up the notion of being able to support to-dos, both from an iOS and an Android perspective. Like I need somebody else telling me, here are some more to-dos. But anyhow, we do that now. We did some tweaks in the companion product, which is the piece for Traveler that allows you to read encrypted mail on your mobile device. And then we also did some things with Mobile Connect. We updated it to 6.1.5. Anybody using Mobile Connect that you know of? Yeah. Well, if you're using Traveler, you're using Mobile Connect. You just don't realize it. It's built into Traveler. But it is also a great standalone VPN, right? You're entitled to it. Those of you that have the client access licenses, the CALs, you're entitled to use that. Whether you realize it or not. IBM uses it almost exclusively as a VPN solution now, and there's well over 100,000 devices inside of IBM for mail, calendar, contacts, connections that's going right over that particular VPN solution. So it's good stuff there. Application development community around Notes and Domino, extremely healthy right now. Extremely healthy. One of the things that Ed did in Orlando a few weeks ago was that he had 2 customers that joined him on stage that talked about the different things they had been doing around application development. And one of the things that was very revealing about that is that both of those customers, one of them was called Bungie, which are probably not pronouncing that right, but pretty close, out of Geneva, agribusiness, great story about what they've done from an X-Pages perspective. And then there was another small US-based company, an insurance company, that has, get this, they have rewritten an underwriting system. That kind of gets your head spinning a little bit. But both companies are doing things with X-Pages, and both companies are gleaning, or they're picking up assets off of OpenNTF that they're turning into those solutions that they're providing to their end user community. This community is as alive and functioning in a healthy way as any development community I have ever seen. It's growing. Tons of contributions. They run contests from a development standpoint, which is kind of a cool thought. Some very good things coming out of this particular community. And by the way, this thing right down here, if you don't know about collaboration today, go check it out. It's just a website, but it happens to be done on X Pages, but it's an offshoot or an outgrowth of OpenNTF. And it's a fantastic spot to keep up with everything that's going on in the collaboration solutions part of IBM. So when Connections is about to come out with a new release, or Notes and Domino is about to come out with a new release, or somebody figures out a new way to integrate the two, this is a great place to go read about it. You'll see it there usually first. So great stuff. All right, let me flip into the productivity tools side of things for just a few minutes here. Our strategy here sort of hinges on what we're doing around IBM Docs. So there is a browser component to our strategy. There is a on-premises component to our strategy. And there is, I guess I probably should say, a cloud component, an on-premises component. And then in and around all of that, there's also a desktop piece. And you remember Symphony. We were struggling up here a few minutes ago with the projector, and we were downloading Symphony to install on another machine. We didn't have to use it, but Symphony is part of our heritage now. The thing about Symphony is that IBM has sort of backed away, not from the importance of an alternative desktop suite, but we have backed away from our development of Symphony as a standalone product, and instead we are contributing the assets from Symphony back into the Apache OpenOffice Foundation, where that has taken on a completely new life, and a completely healthy life from a desktop suite alternative standpoint. So we're kind of excited about that. I think the next chart has some download numbers. Apache OpenOffice. If you haven't tried that, you should try that. It's pretty amazing what's happening, and it's benefiting from the assets that we have contributed. Whether it's source code, it's extensions, whatever it happens to be, it's benefiting from the fact that IBM is pumping a lot of core code back into the Apache Foundation in the form of Apache OpenOffice. Something like 30 million downloads so far of Apache OpenOffice 3.4. From a browser perspective or from a cloud perspective, we have IBM Docs. Right? IBM Docs became available right at the end of 2012. IBM Docs, the first instantiation that people could actually use, became available in Smart Cloud for Social Business. So if you have the package, if you're using Smart Cloud for Social Business, the thing that's called Engage, you now have IBM Docs. Right? There's no extra charge for that. You just have it. Well, what is IBM Docs? IBM Docs, and I've got a slide on it here in just a second, but that's our social editing capability. It's the thing that allows you and me at the same time to be editing the same document, the same presentation, the same spreadsheet, and to be able to benefit from what each other is doing inside the context of that spreadsheet. I'll show you some of that in just a second. We're also active in what we're doing around mobile. Right? The whole idea of being able to do social editing kind of hinges on, hey, I don't really care what device you're using. If you want to use a laptop, great. If you want to use your desktop, great. If you want to use a browser, great. But if I'm on a tablet, or even eventually if I'm on a smartphone, I ought to be able to participate at some level in how those things are being edited. So we're very adamant about taking the social document paradigm, the social document editing paradigm, all the way through the device choice, your choice of devices, your choice of platform. So pretty exciting things going on there. Here's a couple of facts and figures for you about Symphony. I've already mentioned a couple of these. This is the one that stands out to me. This project for Apache OpenOffice is now referred to, or it is what's referred to as a top-level project. It's actually graduated. It means that there's a lot of people paying attention to it right now. 30 million people are saying so. Docs. This are the statements around what IBM Docs is. we're pumped about this. One of the things that happened right at the end of 2012, I said we have a cloud strategy available now in Smart Cloud for Social Business. It's also available as a standalone. There is a thing called Smart Cloud Docs, so that if you don't want Smart Cloud for Social Business stuff, you can just use IBM Docs branded as Smart Cloud Docs in the cloud, and that's all you get. So there is an option for doing that. One of the things that we did right at the end of the year, very end of the year, was the code is remarkable in IBM Docs. It's been a long time coming. We wanted to get this right. When we got to the end of 2012, the code seemed like it was ready to roll, and so we rolled it out, sort of under the radar, as an on-premises choice. So now, not only do you have IBM Docs in the cloud, so to speak, if you want to be an organization that is actually serving IBM Docs from within your own data center, that'd be what I would refer to as an on-premises deployment, you can do that. You'll see some more marketing, some more hype around that as we get a little bit deeper into 2013. We just sort of sneaked that right under the radar in at the end of 2012. Again, the code was robust enough and things seemed to just sort of line up to allow us to do that. So there is the option for an on-premises utilization of IBM Docs. Pretty cool thing. We're going to continue to do some things in IBM Docs. We've got a long list of things that we want to do. Some of them have to do with enhancing, just continuing to enhance the user experience in a collaborative kind of capability. The ability to do section assignments. If I take, open up something that I'm working on with somebody else and I decide that, hey, Bob, you need to be working on this paragraph over here, or you need to be working on these 6 charts over there, or here's a range of cells in a spreadsheet that you need to, I can do that. And then the assignment then shows up in their social activity stream that they have a to-do. Right, so that's the idea of section assignments. A lot of things going on in addition to obviously working on tablet type devices. We're going to focus first on tablets. We actually have all this pretty much done and working. The next step you'll see us take is to continue to expand it to smartphone devices. Smart Cloud Notes, a lot of things going on in this space. We did basically 2 things in 2012 around Smart Cloud Notes. This is the part, I'll tell you what those 2 things are in just a second. This is the multi-tenanted Domino offering that runs in the Smart Cloud for Social Business infrastructure. So this is cloud. This is the thing that says, hey, I'm not going to buy a license from you. I'm going to rent software as a service. Okay? So we did 2 things in 2012. We extended the functionality in Smart Cloud Notes sort of incrementally. We'll talk about some of those things in a moment. But then we also added a couple of different offerings. And one of those offerings is right here in this column, something called Smart Cloud Notes Entry. Now, why is that important? It's important because what we have done with Entry is we think, found a price and sort of a price and functionality intersection point to where people, for this particular offering, the real Smart Cloud Notes offering, you would pay $5 US per month per person. This offering, with some slightly scaled back functionality, size of inbox being an example of that, $3 US per person per month. And actually the retail price, the street price of that, we see that going as low on a lot of contracts down to somewhere around $2 or even less US per person per month. It's important because people that are adopting cloud as part of their strategy right now are all of a sudden realizing that, oh my goodness, there's now a way for us, the class and category of users that we might not have wanted to serve with email before. Think of the factory floor workers, the clerks, the truck drivers, the people who you wouldn't necessarily include in your email deployment. Now there is a price point and a functional point that makes sense to do so. So we're seeing just an unbelievable uptake in the cloud based on this offering alone. Pretty cool offering. So that's one of the things that we added in terms of the 2012 pieces. We also added something called Archive Essentials. This is interesting because it fills a gap that exists in cloud We're not alone. We're not unique in the way this gap manifests itself. Google has this issue. Microsoft has this issue. But it's the idea of, what do I do about retention? And while you guys were in here for the first session this morning, I live in a quota kind of world for my mail inbox, right? It has to be, less than 600 megabytes or whatever. And while you were in here this morning, I'm sitting over in the little room just off to the side where we came in this morning, archiving my mail, right? Because I had bumped up against that quota. And when we hit that quota, you're cut off until you archive and get back below your target number. Well, that same thing becomes an issue, a magnified issue, when you're talking about mail that never comes to you on premises. It's all in a cloud somewhere. How in the world, all of that mail that's flowing through all that cloud infrastructure, how in the world do I go back and actually search that stuff, particularly if there is a need from a legal e-discovery perspective? And this is a solution that fits and fills that particular gap for retention. Whatever your policy is, whatever whatever you guys choose to how long you choose to hang on to mail, this is a flexible enough offering that you can keep mail forever in an unlimited quantity. It never goes into a third-party set of servers or data centers, stays all within the smart cloud infrastructure inside of IBM. You control how long the policy lasts. You have the ability to go back and search, put legal holds on material that flows through that infrastructure in whatever shape, fashion you need to do so. Very, very attractive offering. You're going to see us take this offering, by the way, and bring it over to the on-premises world a bit later this year. Can't give you a lot of specifics about that, but it's exciting to me because this has been such a hot commodity. People really, really like this particular offering in the cloud, and it makes sense to do so on premises as well, I believe. In terms of the actual things that went on with Smart Cloud Notes, we did a couple of things here worth pointing out. In 2012, we added something called IMAP support. You have that. Those of you that know anything about your Domino infrastructure today, on premises you have support for IMAP and for POP as additional protocols that you can use in that environment. In the cloud, POP does not make sense. It is not a robust enough, it's not a stable enough protocol over which email can consistently flow. IMAP, however, does. And so 2012, in June, we actually added support for that protocol into the cloud environment. The other thing I'd draw your attention to here is the very last one on the list, MDM, Mobile Device Management Support. The ability to take those smartphones for organizations to actually control what happens to those phones. This is where there is a lot of exposure for most organizations today that they choose to ignore controlling the data and controlling what is actually stored and stays on those phones. That's a very risky spot for companies to be in if they choose to ignore that. Well, there are a number of vendors in the market, AirWatch, Mobile Iron. There's one from IBM called Tivoli Endpoint Manager. They're all what we refer to as MDM, or Mobile Device Management Solutions. It's one thing to be able to manage those devices if you are serving those from an on-premises world, right? That's pretty easy to do. Mobile Iron does it, AirWatch does it, Tivoli does it. It's a completely different thing if all of a sudden your Domino server or your mail infrastructure is no longer on premises, it's up in the cloud somewhere. So what we did is we added the capability in Smart Cloud to actually provide an API for those vendors to use, to which they can code their solutions and provide that MDM capability in the cloud. Very good stuff there. A number of things that we're doing for 2013. We won't detail all of these for you, but there's some obvious things one of the things that I am adamant about is the idea of taking what we're building and developing from an on-premises perspective versus what we're building and delivering from a cloud perspective and closing that gap. Right now, there is a lag between those two. Sometimes the features go into the on-premises versions of our products first, Whether you're talking about notes, domino, connections, whatever you happen to be talking, goes into on-premises first, and then later comes into the cloud experience. We are adamant about driving those two things closer together and eliminating that gap so that the on-premises world and the cloud world are almost, maybe not exactly in sync with each other, but pretty darn close. If you think about it for a second, if you're a company who has a mixed deployment, I have users that are using stuff on premises and some that are using stuff in cloud, you want those experiences to be the same, right? And so the idea here is to start to eliminate that gap, that makes them not the same. And we're adamant about doing that. So a number of these things are actually features and functionality from a collaboration and messaging standpoint that start to eliminate that gap. All right, connections mail. Good stuff here. This is one of those. This is one of those projects that is just. It's exciting. I can't even talk today. That was Dutch, by the way. Connections mail is one of those projects. This one that I've had the responsibility before, but it's also one of those things that you kind of start with an idea and you kind of go, I don't think so. In fact, when we first started this particular project, I sat down with the development team. We talked through the ideas, talked through the concepts like we always do for this kind of stuff. And I looked at him and I said, I'll never use that, you guys. That's not something that really makes a lot of sense. I'm to the point now where I can't do my job without this nifty little thing. Let me tell you what it is. So, connections. I know you guys, a lot of you are interested in connections. Some of you have connections deployments. The whole idea around connections mail is to in your social experience, when you're using connections, is to be able to allow you to stay focused right there inside of connections, if that's where you want to work, and yet have the ability to do basic mail, basic calendaring kinds of things without having to divert your attention and whiplash you over to some other application. There's a concept there allowing you to stay in the context of where you choose to work that you're going to see from now on for our products. It just so happens that Connections Mail, this thing that we're talking about here, this is the first time where we have actually taken notes and domino stuff and sort of pushed it over into the connections stuff. With me? Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of screenshots here, what it actually looks like. The whole idea of being in mail without being in mail is what we're talking about here. You think about it for just a second. Where's my phone? Every morning, see if this sounds familiar. Every morning, you wake up. Before your feet hit the floor, you reach over to the nightstand, right? Turn on your device, and before you even stand up, you're sitting there just cruising through stuff. Anybody else do that? You guys are weird. We all do that. But on an iPhone device and an Android device, there's a word that I'm doing. There's a word that I'm associating with that action. I'm sitting there triaging, right? I'm sitting there, delete, 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 yeah. Right? That's basically what I'm doing. All the stuff that came in overnight, it's stuff that I don't make sure when I open up my laptop from the real experience, I'm not having to deal with, because it's clutter. I just get it out of here. I don't need it. Now, what's really cool is we're actually doing some stuff. This is kind of the future stuff. We're doing some cool stuff analytically to help that clutter just sort of disappear. So that's a whole nother discussion. But if you think about that triage experience and what you're doing on your iPhone, that is exactly what Connections Mail is, right? On my iPhone, when I'm doing, looking at emails, responding to things, I don't have the ability to do underlining. I don't have the ability to make things bold. I don't have the ability to propose an alternate meeting date for a calendar invite. I can accept it, sure. But the idea, it's very lightweight in this experience. And that's exactly what Connections Mail is. It's a lightweight experience over in Connections that allows me to triage things right there in the context of Connections so that I can be very responsive very quickly. So does that, you kind of get the concept there? So the other thing that's happening with that whole thought process is that for the last year and a half, we've sort of been rethinking what email needs to look like for you. So if it works like that over in Connections, what would happen if we took that same lightweight experience, not Traveler-based, but we took that same lightweight experience and we popped it on over into your tablet world, or maybe your smartphone world, in addition to what you have today with Traveler. That whole concept of being able to rethink the way messaging works in the context of my social experience is one you're going to see us continue to sort of grow up and mature over the next several months. So a couple of screenshots. You can just lightweight messaging. I've talked about that. Here's your inbox. It's just you just click on the little mail envelope up the top of the ribbon bar in Connections. Down drops your email. Very quick, very light. Same thing for calendar. This is an example down here. The coloration in the projector is kind of bleeding things out a little bit, but you get the idea of things that overlap or conflict with each other. The ability to just triage, just be able to quickly decide, delete, or I want to keep that. I might even want to throw it in a folder. I might want to respond to that. All of that kind of capability exists in this lightweight experience. Probably stating the obvious. Obviously, you can write a message. You can create a message. You can address a message. We've done some really cool things in connection with Connections. So, Connections files. Love that stuff. That has saved my life. Remember a while ago I said that I live in a world of mailbox quotas? Drives me insane when people send me their 26 megabyte PowerPoint presentation. You just chewed up 26 megabytes of my 600 megabytes. I don't like you anymore. Well, with the integration that's going on in Connections Mail, and even what we're doing in 9.0, we have a much cleaner, much smoother ability to actually send around files links. Drag and drop kind of stuff. I want you to have this file. Well, wait a minute, I got to go change the access control list. No, you don't. We've introduced the concept called share on send, which means that, gee, if I want you to have this document, if I want you to have a link to this document in my Connections files, don't you think I want you to be able to read it? Right, so share on send just takes care of all that for you in the background. Pretty neat stuff. Scheduling. Let me get to this is the one I wanted to get to. So keep in mind this triage kind of stuff, right? So there are some things missing. This is not, I need to point this out because this question always comes up. This is not another mail infrastructure replicated over inside of Connections. This is just a window into your Domino, and get this, much as it pains me to say this, your Domino mail and calendar or your Exchange mail and calendar. Don't you think that opens up some interesting conversations in our little world? Just make sure you're hearing me that it's not, I'd have to go stand up a completely separate, infrastructure into which all this stuff replicates. That's not what we're talking about. It's just a window. Just a window.
Something in your connection window, then it's also deleted in your Outlook?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the integration I'm talking about here. Yeah, unfortunately. And I can't talk a lot about Outlook right now, but there's some cool things going on there too. So if you, this is me avoiding eye contact. If you need to talk about Outlook at some point, and Outlook is a oh golly, man, you guys are videoing this too. No eye contact. The things that are going on with the integration with obviously our own stuff, but the integration with potentially other people's stuff is a pretty exciting story right now. So that's all I'm going to say. Just I'm going to get fired. I can tell it right now. My name is Ed Brill. we live in a world, the point is we live in a world where it's not a ubiquitous world. It's not an all domino. It's not an all exchange. It's not an all cloud. It's no longer an all on-premises world. And I don't think anybody but IBM is as aggressive about embracing, hey, I don't care what your client is, bring your smartphone, bring your tablet, bring your Outlook, bring your notes, bring your browser. I don't care which browser, I don't care if it's Windows, Linux, or some. IBM is right in the middle of making sure you have that flexibility. All right, maybe that's the best way to say all that. I'll just kind of leave it right there for a minute. All right, things that we're doing, back to connections mail, things like accept or decline calendar invites. You're like, wait, Scott, I thought you said we could at least, triage stuff. Well, yeah, these are things that we're adding. In fact, most of these things, the development team that I work with has already done these things, but these are things that won't appear until our next release in the June-July timeframe. But these are the things that are coming to sort of complete that triage experience. When we went out the door in September with Connections Mail, there were some things that we left off. And we did so that we could get it out the door. And we're going back now and putting on those other things that make it a complete triage experience. And that's what this list, I think, represents. Okay, my favorite thing. We got to hurry here. Notes Domino 9.0 Social Edition. So if you've been around our stuff for any length of time at all, you know that we've been talking about something called Vulcan, right? You've heard that vision. There's for the last 3 or 4 years, there's this idea of the Vulcan vision. Don't get all Star Trek-y on me or any of that kind of stuff, because I'm not going to go there either. But the idea was to do some pretty unique things with the client, or the client experience. And for this conversation, that client experience pertains both to a rich client experience as well as a browser experience, and ultimately a tablet or smartphone experience. But a lot of cool things are coming in just a matter of a few short weeks now in the 9.0 Social Edition release. We'll talk about those. Let me see a show of hands. Anybody that's actually messed with 9.0, downloaded it, your companies? I know you IBMers. Okay, cool. Very cool. Cool release. And the whole theme of the release is the integration with what we're doing around social. So there are 3 things. Let's say right there. There are 3 things. If you forget everything I say about Notes Domino 9.0, I want you to remember these 3 things. It's an acronym. MES. Mess. Yeah, thanks. Beat you. Modernization. We've updated so many things that even my children are looking at me like, Dad, that's a pretty cool application now. I would be okay with using that. We've modernized it. Which means that, unfortunately, we've kind of been ignoring those things for the last few years. I used to like you guys. But modernization. Second thing, ease of use. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What do you mean now when I'm inside of Notes and all I want to do is just paste in some plain text like I can do in every other stinking application in the world, Control-Shift-V, or Mac is Command-Shift-V. In Notes, I got to do Command-Q, stand on my head, wink 3 times, and then select whether it's formatted or unformatted text, right? A lot of those things, not all of them, but a lot of those things are fixed and gone and cleaned up inside of Notes so that it works like you would expect a modern application to work. So Command-Shift-V now, or Control-Shift-V, does now paste plain text, right? And you think about those little things. Don't underestimate the power of the simple things that we have done in this release. There is a long list of them. I have a few of my favorites coming on a slide here in a second. So that's the second word. There was, first of all, modernization. The second word was, or the second phrase is ease of use. And then the third one is the one that gets me the most jazzed. That's social integration. There is this standard in the marketplace today called Open Social, and the specification is actually 2.0. And what it does is it says, okay, if we're going to have to live with a world of messaging and collaboration, which, obviously my career is sort of hinged on that, if we're going to do that, how do we integrate that with the world of social? because we think there's a chance to blend those two things in a unique way, something I said earlier where I let you work in the context in which you want to work. If Connections is where you want to work, you get to stay in Connections because you've got Connections mail. If Notes is the place you want to work, whether it's a browser, a rich client, or a mobile device, I'm going to treat you the same way. So if we're going to do that, technically what's going on behind the scenes there is that I'm taking a piece, technically it's called a MIME part of an email message. It's the payload, if you will, of an email message. And I'm going to add some capabilities, I'm going to add some intelligence to that email message that now lets you do some special things. Things like, I'll come back to these guys in just a second. Things like, it was a lot further than I thought it was. Right here. Things like, okay, if this is my inbox, this is my preview window, I no longer have to worry about textual kind of messages coming in. Messages that come in now look like this. They have places and ways for me to take action. I don't have to go somewhere else to comment about something. I don't have to go somewhere else to preview something. I don't have to go to some back-end system. You know, Ed, one of the last things he did for me, bless his heart, was he said, Scott, in February, I'm no longer going to be around. You have 2 weeks in Europe. Go. He had to approve my travel, right? He didn't have to go to some back-end SAP system somewhere and crawl through all of the, you know, you're snickering. I feel your pain. He didn't have to crawl through a bunch of back-end, you know, web-based stuff to go off and make the decision for me to travel. All he had to do was, here's an example of it. All he had to do, this is not mine, but this is the way the travel request would have been presented to him. From a business process management, this happens to be ours called Lombardi. But all the information, Ed, I'm traveling this date to that date, it's going to cost this much, approve it or reject it. It's presented to him as part of that MIME part, that payload of that email message. Technically, this is called an open social gadget. But it comes to him with a decision point, and again, he doesn't have to go blapping off into 3 different systems to go off and figure out whether or not I can travel. Right? That's the whole idea, is to bring, you're going to live in your inbox, admit it, we all do anyhow, right? The idea is to bring stuff to you so that you can take action wherever it is you choose to work, okay? Now let me back up and catch a couple of things that I sort of sneaked through very quickly here. I told you about Traveler, some of the things that we're doing in 2013 that you need to be aware of. Traveler, this is the release that's coming out in March. Traveler 9.0 comes out with Notes and Domino 9.0. For the first time, this is primarily a back-end release of Traveler, right? For the first time, we'll pick up support for mobile's phone. Or, what did I say, mobile's phone? Windows phone. That's important, right? We've sort of kind of, you know, brushed that one off for quite some time now, and there seems to be some traction that Windows Phone is getting in certain parts of the globe. So Traveler will support it. We'll be there with the Surface devices, both RT and Pro. And then the next one down, BlackBerry 10. How many of you are thinking about BlackBerry 10? Just show of hands. Yeah, both of you. BlackBerry 10 is pretty interesting. RIM, well, BlackBerry Limited now, has done some interesting stuff architecturally with what they're doing in Release 10. And for the first time, we can support it because they're doing some things around Active Sync. Remember earlier on I said, watch Active Sync? Keep watching Active Sync. Is that they have figured out something that the rest of the marketplace is still struggling with. How to separate personal data from corporate data on a mobile device. Now, if you haven't thought about that and you have responsibilities in your organizations for mobile devices, you need to brush up on that. Because if you haven't, you're exposed. That kind of goes back to that whole thing about the MDM, the mobile device management discussion. BlackBerry Limited, God, I can't say that, it's RIM. This company has figured out something that everybody else is still sort of messing with right now. So, will it take in the marketplace? The problem will be solved whether BlackBerry 10 takes off or not, but it is a problem that you need to be aware of. Long story short, we're supporting BlackBerry 10 in the 9.0 release of Traveler. And then for the one person in the world that wanted Traveler on IBM iSeries, you'll have that capability from a back-end perspective as well. So you'll have Windows, Linux, IBM iSeries, upon which Traveler, the infrastructure, can run. Several other things coming out. The only thing that this is still Traveler for the 2013 timeframe. The most important one is the first one on the line there. Well, it may not be the most important, but it's important to me. DLP, data loss, data leak prevention. Another thing about these wonderful little devices is that they're great for viewing documents on. Have you thought about secure viewing? Have you thought about what does that mean in the context of, oh gee, I just sent that person an attachment. Does it stay on that phone? What if the phone's lost? Right? Securely viewing attachments is something to pay attention to, you guys. Whether you're talking about documents that you're getting out of connections and leaving on your tablet, or documents that you're getting on a mobile device, such as a smartphone. Tablets are mobile too, I get it. But that's an important thing. Same thing pertains to, go back to the messaging world for a second, the same thing pertains to iNotes. When I ship an attachment to you, I don't know if you're using iNotes on your own laptop or if you're using iNotes on a browser sitting at a kiosk at a local, IKEA store. I don't know. So what I do with those attachments and what I do after you've looked at that attachment on that device from a security perspective is becoming a very important thing to keep your eye on. So we're doing some things in this space to help with the mobile devices. We're also doing some things to help with, as I mentioned a second ago, the iNotes side of things as well. So, sorry, yeah. I know.
You took it off.
I did, sorry. These are the 3 words I told you earlier. Modern, ease of use, social integration. You've seen these kind of fly by a second ago. My favorite list. I'll make sure you guys have these slides or have access to these so you can go back and pick through these things. A lot of things going on in iNotes. Again, the idea here in 9.0 is we've brought parity between notes and iNotes, finally. And they're pretty closely aligned with each other. As much as possible, from an engineering perspective, we have aligned those two products. We talked about embedded experiences. The last slide I want to give you, we're going to get to this, if it kills me, is right here. The roadmap. So here's the deal. With 9.0, we're standing at, this is the most significant release we've done of Notes and Domino in 10 years. It took us 18 months to develop 9.0. 9.0 has its heritage in the 8.5. If we had released another version of 8.5, it would be 8.5.4. So 9.0 has its heritage on a very, very solid foundation. 9.0 comes out in a month, right? Actually a little less than that. The thing I want you to take away about 9.0 is that it is a deployable release because of that heritage of being built on 8.5, what we thought was going to be 4. It turns out there is so much stuff in 9.0. IBM spent $100 million on investing in developing release 9.0. The last thing I want to do is get you excited about a future that goes product-wise out to 2015 at the expense of ignoring what's coming in a month. You follow what I'm saying? Yep. 9.0 changes the game. It's the integration of social and messaging and collaborations, blending the two things together. You can't ignore that. And what's coming on down the pipe, all we're showing here is IBM is committed to the future in this stuff. We've already publicly stated that 8.5x, 8.5.1.2.3, and there will be an 8.5.4 by the way, but 8.5.1.2.3, we've already publicly stated that through 2016, 8.5x will be supported. That's not a definite statement, that's an at least statement. So when IBM, I mentioned this earlier, when IBM puts 9.0 into the market in March, there's another extension of 10 years that this technology sort of just goes out to. That's just the way IBM works. So the fact that this only goes to 2015, that's just from a product planning perspective. The future goes and goes and goes with this stuff. That's one of the messages I want you to take away today. So whether you're talking about messaging and collaboration or social or the integration of those two things, the future looks pretty bright from our perspective in terms of what we're doing here. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. We'll make sure that the slides are available to you guys. Thanks for letting me keep you a few minutes past the top of the hour.